But these are each of the stations. And that conveyor belt there, in the sort of over to the left, that boxes, full boxes come in on that conveyor belt and they get put at your station. And that is what churches have sent. So we open the box, take the shoe boxes out, do our process with them, which I'll show you. And then afterwards, they get put on the conveyor belt on the other side, and it goes back to the back. And those big squares back there are the trucks, the back of the trucks back there that are getting loaded with the boxes. Just sort of more of the same. Those big green containers there, this was amazing. Those are full of filler items for people to take to their stations. One morning we came in and one was overflowing with fidget spinners, overflowing. When we left for lunch, it was empty. Like, that's how fast you go through this stuff. Over here, I guess it's kind of hard to see, there are also different stations. There's the box hospital, where if you get a box and it's ripped or torn or broken or something like that, you can send it to the hospital and they'll try to fix it. There's the inappropriate items, which are toothpaste, just things that you're not allowed to have in there. They go to the inappropriate section. And by the way, anything that is taken out of a box, if it's not allowed, body wash, different toys, toothpaste, things like that, that's all donated to women's shelters, homeless shelters, so it's not going to waste. The things that people sent aren't just being thrown in the garbage, they're being given to somebody in need. And the other one was, what was the other one? The box hospital, oh, the other one was fillers. They kind of go in, yeah. Two things I wanted to have happen while I was there. I thought it would be really cool to see Franklin Graham. That did not happen. However, what I wanted more than anything was to meet somebody who had been the recipient of a box. This young man, his name is Alex. He was a victim of the war in Rwanda. He lost his whole family. He lost his parents and his brother and was put into an orphanage. At 7 years old, he received a box, and it changed his life. He's married. He has a daughter. He lives in Wisconsin. He volunteers with Samaritan's Purse, and then he also does speaking engagements, goes to different places to talk to people about what he's been through in his journey and his relationship with the Lord, and he's so sweet. He was so sweet. People were talking about him when we were leaving that day, and you don't have a lot of time to chit-chat. Like, you're working, so you don't have a lot of time to chit-chat, so there were different parts of the story that people would have. And one of the men said he loves to show pictures of his wife and daughter. If you get a chance tomorrow, go over and ask him to see pictures. So, it might just take a second. Well, there's my mom with him. But she went over and asked him the next day then to see pictures of his wife and daughter, who he's so proud of. But he was really just a gentle spirit, very, very kind person. And this is just pictures. This is one of our stations that we were at, these 3 boxes. One side is for boys, the other side is for girls. Oh, that's right, I did want to. I asked him what his favorite thing was that he received in his box. It was a candy cane, which unfortunately we can't give anymore. But his comb, he had the longest. He had that for 3 years. So, but these boxes, each box, one is boys 2 to 4, 5 to 7, 10 to 14. And as the people are working and going through the boxes, they bring them down to you, and then you put them in the appropriate box, which sounds easy, and it's not. Packing these boxes is quite something.
How many did they have?
15. They want a minimum of 15 per box. Well, people like to be very generous and give the big plastic containers and stuff like that, so it's kind of Jenga. It's like a big Jenga puzzle. And each station had a team leader, and I have pictures. I wish I would have thought of it from the beginning to show each one of them doing it, but I called them the OCC box police because every time you're done, they would come over and look through to see if they could jam one more in there, just one more. And if you couldn't figure out a way and just, or you know, ask, they would come over and they somehow would find a way. Again, just, I was taking pictures of, I thought it was really neat to be, most of the time I was packing boxes, but for about 2 hours, I did this job where I was going through to see if there were inappropriate items or if it needed filled. And I just took a picture of some really neat things that people gave. Typically, I have, in the past, if I do 10 boxes, I buy 10 jump ropes, 10 bars of soap, 10 of this, 10 of that, 10 of this. I'm not doing that anymore. This really, seeing what people put into these when they come through, it just made me realize that I was kind of phoning it in. And I want each box I do to be so special for that child, that that child knows they're so important and so wonderful that somebody took time and love to do a box for them that is for them. So anyway, this one said, Jesus loves me. It was folded, so I didn't get the, but anyway, it was a little tank top in there. These were neat. Medication bottles. They did fishing kits for boys and sewing kits for girls and just different things in these little pill bottles. People are very creative. I thought that was really cute, and it had a totally cute pair of sunglasses in it. One of the things that we really liked, I know my mom, well, you tell them about on the lid, what you like.
When they opened the lid of the box, they had pictures.
You got to put that up to your face.
That were sending, like little school pictures.
Mom.
I'm sorry, like little school pictures.
It's not on.
Okay.
It's all underneath.
Okay. Okay. When we opened the lids, is it on?
Nope. It's dead. When you would open the lid, sometimes kids had their school picture. When you flip the lid open, their school picture would be on there, or a family photo, or somebody would write, Jesus loves you, and color a beautiful picture on there. It was really neat when you'd open them and see these different things on the inside of the lid. We were kind of joking around while we were there that because we were doing this trip, we now know what the guys who go to Nicaragua feel like. Because, you know, it was basically a very comfortable, fantastic trip for us, and we know they don't always get that. And so we got to go to nice restaurants every night. The NEF tours definitely kept you very busy, kept us doing a lot of things. But the Peddlin' Pig was one of the places we went to. Neither one of us eats meat, so we added that to our list of how we know how they. But it was a really neat place. It was a really, really cool place, and every time you went out for dinner or lunch, we sat with different people. So we got to know everybody that we were on this trip with. And, I mean, everybody was so, I can't describe this group of people. It was quite something to, every single day, spend your entire day with generous, kind, loving, God-loving, prayerful human beings. That was your whole day. Every day was spent in service with these unbelievably wonderful people. And actually, the sister-in-law of Bob Neff, her sister is married to Bob, she was on this trip for the very first time, and her friend had asked her to go, and she decided to go, and she said, you know, for about a few weeks before this trip, Satan was working on me and telling me not to go on this trip. And then the morning of, her friend calls her and says, I'm sick, I can't go. And she was like, oh, and she said, had she told me the night before, I probably wouldn't have gone, but I was dressed, I was ready, my bags were there, so here I am. So she texted her sister and said, you know, this is what's going on, I'm really nervous. And her sister said, the people going on this tour have servants' hearts, and they are loving and kind, and you will have no problems, you will have a wonderful time. And she said that she was so glad that she came, and she was so happy because that was exactly her experience with these people. I mean, we went in not knowing one person, not one, and the next day I knew about their grandkids and their kids and their dogs and their families, and you know, you really, really, really got to know these just unbelievably wonderful people. Nobody's on this trip. It's not self-serving. The people who are on this are here to do good, and they want to do good, and it has nothing to do with them. It has to do with what can they do for others. Funny, they were hilarious, just wonderful, wonderful people. So this was one of the nights at dinner. This is it snowing really hard. It didn't do that here, but it did in North Carolina while we were there. So the next day, actually, school was canceled, and the roads were just kind of wet, but they don't. My mom said, we were watching the news, and we're like, why is school canceled? And she said, well, I think it snowed, so I opened the curtains. I'm like, oh, okay. This is Eugene. I love him so much, I can't stand it. He is the sweetest, funniest, most wonderful person. He's my new best friend. I love him. And his wife, Carol, is a complete and total sweetheart. I actually ran into her at the Brickerville house a few weeks after we had gotten back, and I was sitting at the table, and I look up, and somebody's looking at me smiling, and I was like, oh my goodness, and I went over, and she hugged me, and we were talking, and I went to introduce her to my friend, and I didn't know Carol's name. We all had name tags, but it was cold all the time, so we always had jackets and sweatshirts, and I said, you know, Amy, this is, and I looked at her, I said, I'm so sorry. She's like, my name is Carol, and she looked at me and went, I'm so sorry. And I said, I'm Virginia. But we knew each other that well that you could hug each other and be excited to see one another, and yeah. This is a better picture of how full these big, huge containers get. Oh, that was the day I took a picture of it when we left because it was empty and it was full of fidget spinners before, a couple hours before. Okay, this is the table. The first thing you do is there's a trunk under the table with just a hole over a slot. It's a locked trunk. And the first person opens the box, they look in there. If there's any money, envelope, anything like that, they take it out and they put it in that locked trunk. Then it goes to the next person, and they are looking for inappropriate items, taking those out, and all these things in those little baskets are fillers. So then they're loading it up. If there's not very much in there, it needs something else, they're loading it up with the things in those baskets right there. That is where you put inappropriate items. As you can see, there's toothpaste. Over to the left is a pair of sneakers. Oh, and there's my sock foot. I didn't realize that. My shoes were killing me. I bought a brand new pair of shoes before we went, and they hurt really bad, so I just took them off. And it worked like that, and it was perfect. This was Karen. This is Skip and Karen were the tour guides. She has purple hair. It's her favorite color, and she wore some kind of a headpiece every day so that she would be easy to find. You would just look for the Christmas tree or snowman or whatever she happened to have on that day. And that was a pair of glasses that was in one of the boxes, so she was trying them on. But they were wonderful. And again, more pictures of that. And then here's where you tape it. That was her job most of the time.
I love doing that.
Yeah, you just talk about your tape.
Well, I just love doing it. You stayed in one place and kind of by yourself and just kept wrapping these boxes. When they come in really full, it's really hard to wrap it. It's like things are falling out, but you can't take anything out of the box, you know, only if it's inappropriate, but you can't make it smaller. You have to keep whatever those people put in it and just keep wrapping and wrapping, but that was my favorite job.
And then she would hand it to one of us, and we'd put it in a box.
Yeah.
That's how, when they were done looking through it, they would throw it up on there, and then she would grab it from there, tape it, and then send it over to one of us. These men amazed me because those boxes are insanely heavy, and they would pick them up like they were nothing and take them over to a conveyor belt, and off they'd go. But that, I was trying to show kind of how it's like Jenga or like a puzzle. Again, they want at least 15 in there. So you had to do the best you could and then try to get things on the top of them. The old OCC shoe boxes that you can order from them, if you have every single one of those in a box, you can get 23. I only saw that happen one time.
It was called a perfect box. And everybody wanted to do that.
Yes.
To get a perfect one.
I saw that once.
Yeah.
Again, just kind of showing how trying to get everything in there. And if there's a space like that, they will try to find a way to fill it. Eugene. Oh, after she's done taping. Oh, and the guy with the red shirt on, he is doing scanning. So sometimes people want to know where the box goes, so they will track it. And so what he does is anytime you have one that needs tracked, we yell for him, "We need you!" And he'll come over and scan it so that the person who sent it now knows where it's going. Like wherever it's going that day is in that scanner, and then he'll scan it and it lets them know where it's going. So we keep them very busy. This is one of the OCC policemen looking through a box I had done to see if he could fit more. There's another one. These people, where I am right now, these people were from Louisiana. They only needed one person, so I was like, oh, I'll go. So I ended up being with a group of people from Louisiana who were just fun and kind and sweet, just like everybody is there. They were really a lot of fun. This was one that I got with a bunch of big ones. So you couldn't put those all in a box because then you can't get 15. So they kind of have to stack up there, and you just kind of put one in a box, and then you start putting stuff underneath and trying to get it out of the way until you can get it into a box.
Perfect box.
That's the perfect box. It's the only time I saw it, and there it was, and it was so pretty. And then here they are. I just wanted to show the conveyor belt a little closer up of them coming around. This is when you're done, you put it on the conveyor belt, this guy tapes the big box and then sends it on its way to the next place. This is where I took some of the pictures, and it was the most wobbly thing on the planet, but if they had announcements to do, anything like that, they got up on there and would do that.
Yeah, and when they did the announcements, you had to stop working.
Yeah.
Nobody could move, you just stopped. It gave you a break, though, because you'd be going for like an hour and a half, and then they would do that, and you could just stop and rest for a couple of minutes. When a truck is full, when the truck is now full, which is 480 of the large boxes fills a truck, you will hear a horn blow, and then these men pray over everything in that truck. Periodically during the day also, they would get up to do an announcement and say, everybody, I want you to stop now. Stop what you're doing. So we would stop, and they would say, lay hands on what you're doing now and let's pray. Those moments, to have that many people in one place praying for children, for their souls, for their lives, it just really, that's not something you get to experience every day. It was really incredible. Oh, this was one of the restaurants we went to. This was Daniel Boone Inn. That one was really neat. It was family style, so they just come and put food on the table and you go from there. But every single one of these people is just awesome and amazing. The lady in the back in the pinkish reddish sweater, she sat in front of us on the bus, and every day when we would get on, she was typically there first and had the sweetest smile you've ever seen in your life, and just made you happy just to see her and be around her. So I told her one day when I got on the bus, I said, you make me so happy. Every time I walk on here, your smile. She's like, oh, I did something right this week. Yes. This was a bookstore they took us to. It was very beautiful. It was called Cornerstone Bookstore. It was actually right across the street from our hotel, but it's a busy highway, so you can't really walk it. So the bus driver was kind enough to take us over. But it was a really, really neat bookstore. This is the cafeteria where we would eat lunch.
every day at 1 o'clock. But again, you just sort of sat wherever, you know. Sometimes every table was full, so we'd go to one by ourselves, then the next people would come in and sit with us. This is Skip and Karen again, our tour guides. They were just wonderful. This is them in front of the fireplace at the cafeteria. We went to do a tour of the Franklin Graham offices. And when we first got there, we needed to wait for our tour guide. So she had us sit in this room, and I was trying to get pictures, and I wanted to get a wide angle picture. So I kind of stepped out of the room and taking pictures, and all of a sudden, and I don't know which one did, one of them started singing Joy to the World, and like that, everybody was singing it very loudly. I got very emotional with that. That was really amazing, and I was trying to imagine what that must have sounded like to people out in the offices hearing this coming down the halls. It was really, really, it was really cool. And this is us touring in one of the hallways. Here they have cubicles. Now the next pictures, I know you really like that, so you can, the offices. No, go ahead and start though before do you want me to?
Well.
Oh, wait, not there
ahead.
yet, sorry. This room is actually where Franklin Graham does his interviews on television. So if you see him on TV and there's a beautiful fireplace behind him, he's not at home. He's in here. And that chair sitting there, they said he had just used a couple of days before to do an interview in there. But on TV it looks so homey and cozy, but when you walk in, there's just like camera equipment everywhere. Here you go.
Yeah, you know, his father never wanted to be alone in a room, an office or anything with a woman, you know, to just be on the safe side and not have anybody ever think anything. So these offices are all glass. You can see right in them as we were all walking down the halls, one office after another. People would be in there having meetings. And it's all glass. So you can see.
They want to be transparent with everything. Mm-hmm. So as you can see, there's a meeting going on there. This next picture, apparently this man needed to bring his grandson to work that day. That's not typical, but something happened that he had to bring his grandson. Yeah. So when we walked by, he was in there playing.
It's so cute.
Yeah.
Oh,
these were our leaders flossing. Doing the dance. It was hilarious. I loved them. They were so wonderful. And then just more. Oh, look, there's almost another perfect box there. This was like the gift shop area back there. That's as big as it is. They just have T-shirts and a couple of little things. When you leave behind it, they give you a free T-shirt, which are these, and a little ornament. But I got a Christmas ornament. It's an elephant with an OCC box in its trunk, which is really neat. Mm-hmm. You can take your picture there. This is Bill, our bus driver, who, I can't even with him. He's such a gentleman, kind, sweet, just absolutely the epitome of a gentleman. And when we were doing our tour of the offices, he was sitting in a chair, and there was a picture above his head, and the tour guide said, hey, I need you guys to look at this picture. It's right above the head of your cute little bus driver. And I've never seen anybody turn redder faster in my life. You just saw it. He turned the brightest red. This is at a place called something Rustico. It was an Italian restaurant. It was really, really good, too. Beautiful restaurant. They had, like, jazz music, musicians there playing. Oh, there's Bill.
That's a Cracker Barrel.
Yeah. And then that's all of us. And they sent that picture to us in our thank you letter. Some of the stories we heard that were really, really incredible were a young man in Africa got a box, and there were mittens in it, which, you know, to the rest of us, that sounds like, He was thrilled because his job was to take the hot bread off of the fire. And he's been doing that with his bare hands. And now he had a pair of gloves that he could wear to take that off of there. A lot of things that we learned at the offices were really neat. We didn't learn just about OCC, we learned a lot about what Samaritan's Purse does in general. One of the OCC stories that was really cool, though, was there was a village with a church in this village where people would meet to worship. The neighbors didn't like that. They despised them, hated everything about what they were doing, so they would do things to disrupt their worship time. They would start a fire outside and smoke them out and do different things like that to get them out of there. Well, Samaritan's Purse was coming. They were, bringing gifts. So this church invited that family's children to be a part of it, and the children did go. They got their boxes, they went home, showed it to their parents, read the gospel, and their parents ended up going to that church, asking for forgiveness, apologizing, and they are now very, very active members of this church and have been for quite some time. So it really is amazing what this does, and when it is the children, but it's their families too. It's bringing so many people into a relationship with him, the ability to learn about him. That to me is just, it's so easy for us. It's so easy, and I tend to forget that it's what it's like for somebody else to try and learn about him. And we all know, we've all had times, we all have times that we don't know where we'd be without him. What would we be doing? How would we be functioning without him? And until they find out, that's how they feel. So to do this is just so incredible, to get this word out there to these kids. This year, the goal of OCC was over 9 million boxes, and just from the North Carolina one, their goal was 981,000. I have to find out if they hit that goal. But it boggles your mind. It really, really does. Anyway, things that they do just in general, there are approximately 750,000 volunteers that they have that go in during natural disasters, during things like that, to try and help people. One of the things they were doing in the California fires was actually going out after a person's home had burned down and sifting through and searching through the ash to find belongings that survived. One woman was devastated because she lost her mother's wedding ring, and somebody found it. They went through and they were searching through their home in the ash, and they found this ring. There was an area, and I don't remember where it was, but it was where ISIS is. And what ISIS was doing, and I never knew this, you don't hear about this stuff on the news. They were actually going into people's homes when they weren't there and booby-trapping things in the home. The children, their drawers, things like that. So people would come home, they didn't have any idea anybody had been there, they'd open a cabinet and boom. So Samaritan's Purse went in, set up a hospital there, and would bring these people in who had been injured. There was actually an ISIS member injured, and they brought him in, and they saved him. And he asked them, "Why are you doing this for me?" And they told him about the Lord and their love of the Lord. And I don't know if he became a Christian, they don't know, but talk about planting a seed in the driest, darkest place. Here are these people that he hates so much, and they're helping him. They saved him. So these are the kinds of things they do, and then when they leave, when it's time for them to leave, they leave that hospital there. They leave it to doctors from that area that they've trained, and then they leave. So that hospital still stays there. It's absolutely incredible, the things that they do that don't make it on the news. We don't ever hear about these kinds of things. But it really, truly is amazing and fantastic what they do for people, all in the name of God, all in his name and his glory. There's nothing arrogant. There's nobody arrogant. It's just all for him. And I find that to be absolutely incredible. Yes, we are signed up for next year already. There will never be a time I don't do this again, if I can help it. That just really, I can't express what that felt like, to spend your whole day in service of the Lord with hundreds of other people who felt the same way that you did. That was just absolutely amazing and stunning to me. Our first day on the bus, Skip, our tour guide, said, "You're going to be exhausted." He said, "But I call it exhausted exuberance." And on our last day there, he said, "Exhausted exuberance, did I have it right?" And everybody was like, "Yes!" You're so tired at the end of the day, but you're so fulfilled and just happy, and it's not anything I can describe. You know, I camp, I do lots of, day trips, I do all kinds of different things like that, but this was the time of my life. And it was simply, I think people think Christians are boring sometimes. There was no alcohol, there was no swearing, there was nothing inappropriate. It was a group of God-loving people together having fun and working for Him. And nothing beats that feeling in the universe. Nothing. And one day, you said it earlier about signing up to go work. The tour guide said, he's like, people look at you when you're nuts when you say you pay to go work. And somebody shouted out, "It's a vacation with a purpose." And that's exactly what it is. It's a vacation with a purpose. So I thank you all so much for, first of all, your support of this, ministry, for sending us, because it was, just the time of our lives. It really, really was. You got nothing? Okay.
You said it.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you said there had to be security there?
Yes.
Were people trying to shut it down?
All they said was there are people who live in that area that do not like what they're doing. So I'm assuming there have been threats. Last year, they did see Franklin Graham. He didn't come in there. I guess if he comes in there, work would come to a halt and they need you working. But they said he had a ton of security guards around him, which I think is such a shame that simply because you're doing a good thing, you have to be protected because people don't want you doing that.
Well, some of the schools around there would do projects with doing boxes for that, local schools, and some of the parents wouldn't allow their kids to do it. Mm-hmm. They didn't want them to do it.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, and I thought it was sad too that it was different to spend every day, all day, in that kind of company with people who are just good. It's kind of sad that that's not your everyday existence. So it's such a joy when you actually get to, do that and be a part of it and be a part of that many people. Really amazing. On our last day there, the Skip read this to us. A woman at one of their devotion times and talking about what had happened the day before gave her take on how processing a box is our relationship with the Lord and our journey in our relationship with the Lord. And she was telling him, and Skip said, "Please, can you write that down? And can I please share that?" And she said, "Yeah." So she wrote it down. Her name is Lori Yelk. And when he was done reading it, my mom was like, "Oh, can we get a copy of that?" I said, "That's what I was about to ask." And he said, "Well, I don't have any copies, but I'll send them in the thank you letters." And then as I was leaving the room, he said, "I have one." And he handed it to me. But this explains it perfectly. Journey through an Operation Christmas Child Processing Center. I recently traveled with a group on Bob Neff tours to Samaritan's Purse in Boone, North Carolina, to volunteer at the Processing Center for Operation Christmas Child. On the first day, while working in the warehouse, I saw how the process of preparing boxes to be sent all over the world was very similar to the journey of becoming a Christ follower and how God prepares us to be sent all over the world to serve Him. On arrival to the warehouse, our group went through an orientation to learn the process of preparing boxes before beginning our volunteer time. We then lined up in the volunteer placement line to be sent to teams to work at several different stations doing different tasks. When we come to know Christ, we also have to go through an orientation process of Bible reading and study, prayer and discipleship to learn and follow Him. God then sends us out together to serve and to use our gifts in specific areas. The first step in the process was pre-inspection, and the task was to open the boxes and look for donations. How exciting it was to find these donations and put them in the trunk. God blesses us with good gifts to use for His glory. He supplies us with everything we need to grow in Him. He sees our strengths and knows our heart. The second step in the process was inspection, and this is where inappropriate items were removed from the boxes and put in buckets. Filler items were then placed in the boxes, and the boxes were passed to the taper. God sees every area of our lives, and He desires to fill us with more of Himself. He examines our hearts and asks us to remove those inappropriate things that hinder us from growing in Him. As we surrender these things to Him, He fills us with more of His Spirit. We are sealed in Him and His promises, and nothing, absolutely nothing, can separate us from Him. The inappropriate items in the buckets are not thrown away, but given to community agencies and others who can benefit from them. In the same way, God is able to make something good out of everything in our lives. Some of the boxes were damaged and needed to be sent to Shoebox Hospital for repair. There are times in our lives when we grow tired and weary. We all need to take time for rest and find comfort and healing in our great physician and mighty counselor. The third step in the process was packaging. Each sealed shoebox was placed in a carton designated by age and gender. When each carton was filled, it was placed on the conveyor belt to be loaded on trucks to begin their long journey. Some of the shoebox were scanned before being placed in the carton. We too need to take time to invite the Holy Spirit to scan our lives and allow God to move and work as we journey to become more like Him. The shoeboxes are then delivered to local partners around the world to be given to children. Each shoebox that travels through the warehouse has been prayed over to prepare the way for the good news of Jesus to be received by each child and their family. Prayer is so important and essential in our relationship with God. One day we will join together with the children and families who receive the shoe boxes in giving praise and glory to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Oh, what good news. Oh, what great joy. So explains it perfectly. Somebody had given me an idea, Missy, to put out a challenge to do a box per month. If you do a box per month and put $10 in the tithes for the shipping, by the time the 12th month comes around, you don't have to put any money in for shipping, or the 10th month, because there was an extra $1 in each one of those, and that pays for that. I'm going to be doing that. So I put the challenge out there to everybody to do this and really get this word out to these children. So thank you again for everything very much.
You have been watching a Bible teaching from the Heart of Christ Church. You can find us on the web at www.theheartofchristchurch.com. If you have found benefit in listening to this message, you can send us an email from our contact page, or if you would like to donate or write to us, do so at P.O. Box 1011, Quentin, PA 17083.